Welcome to the Pirate Broadcast, where we interview interesting people doing interesting things, where you can expand your connections, your community. Kindness is cool and smiles are free. And let's get this party started. Welcome back to the Pirate Broadcast. And today we're going to be talking with Andy. We're going to be talking about a number of subjects, some of the things that Andy has going on in his world, and also some of the things that we need to have going on in our world, like some mental health, wellness, taking care of ourselves and producing results and encouraging others to do the same. So, Andy, good morning. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
Excellent. I was actually on a podcast earlier today and talking about this same subject. And as a business owner and somebody that's been in the industry for a while in content creation, podcast, broadcast, live streaming, a lot of people are creating content these days. And so it's sometimes easy to recognize the wins from other people. And I don't think a lot of people understand how much work and effort and energy it takes to put and produce things in the world. And sometimes that can get exhausting for entrepreneurs. And so I want to talk a little bit about how we do that and what we're doing. But first and foremost, talk about what you're doing with Daydreamer Media Group and what your focus and attention is today.
Sure. So my background is actually in marketing for food and beverage companies. I owned a brewery for a couple of years. I worked in distribution, and my team does everything from package design to compliance with the FDA, liquor control boards, organic certifications, all these things. And I actually relocated from Seattle to Denver. And you would think that a beverage marketing agency would do great in Colorado because there are 450 breweries here. But as it turns out, much like Seattle, Portland, San Diego, people here in Denver are like hyper local, and that's awesome because there's lots of small products and great farmers markets. But every single brewery here had like a blood relative that designed their packaging. And of those 450, maybe like 10 or 12 of those distribute in other states. So they want some college kid to do gnarly graffiti art that's only going to be on this can for a limited release, whatever. So I actually started a podcast for the sake of meeting people called Coloradopreneurs, and I just profile local business people. And it kind of took off, went really well. We had a great time. And about a year ago, one of my social media managers said, "Hey, could I be the producer of the podcast? I'm kind of burned out on liking and following and all the things." And I said, cool, but our podcast doesn't make any money and I have to pay your salary. So why don't we take on a couple other podcasts and we can kind of pilot helping people do this? And one became two became five. Now we produce over 40 podcasts, and a media company has spawned from it, which is very different. And you can imagine when people are faced with that, the opportunity of right now versus I'm an expert in beverage marketing. I'm not, I mean, I have some background in broadcast, but as it turns out, there are 7 or 8 companies that have recently been acquired in the tune of $200 to $400 million by Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and Amazon. And so everybody wants to get into the mass podcasting game. But after those ones, there is a Herculean leap down to less than $5 million valuations. And there's a handful of mediums, but it's very hard to get started in a podcasting network because the ability to foster a audience takes a while when you're starting something from scratch. And we set out and started 20 shows at once, and none of them had celebrity hosts or big prior followings. We started 20 from scratch with people from all over the country, and we wanted diverse and unique storytelling. So over the past year, I gave myself a year to figure it out, and the year anniversary is actually today. So
happy anniversary.
Yeah, have to decide whether this is a good idea or not. But anyhow, we're launching news websites, we're publishing books, we're doing A lot of podcasting. You and I were just talking
Yeah.
offline about starting to do some video streaming. So we are trying to diversify and empower a future of online storytelling that goes beyond people with professional broadcasting experience or significant financial resources. Because, to be honest with you, last summer I posted for some podcast hosts, and there's probably less than 100 people in the United States that get paid a full-time salary to be a podcasting host. Among them,
Yeah.
the Obamas, you know, like
Yeah.
there's there's quite a tight pedigree of people that are able to do this full time. So
Yeah.
when you're running, and this is a whole nother element of running a network, because it's not like I own Sports Center and Dan Patrick leaves and I can plug in Scott Van Pelt. You know, like all these podcasting networks, the hosts own their programs and you have some kind of licensing contract or some kind of development deal where you own part of it on the back end, but the talent can
Hmm.
bail. This recently happened with Barstool Sports. They had a person who exited from $1 million contract and went into a $60 million contract with Spotify. So anyhow, we set out to do scholarships and all sorts of development programs. We teamed with a lot of people that were coaches and authors and creators in other areas. So if somebody has like an all-star YouTube, but they've never made it into a podcast, that's a sensible way to get started. But
Hmm.
we hired a couple of new people. Obviously, audio engineers come into play, and some more production folks. And we really set out to just kind of let people tell their stories and hope audiences get into it. And we've had some that were colossal failures. We've had some that were surprise Cinderellas. And it's pretty cool. I have over 100 people that get to write blogs and record podcasts and tell their stories to the masses every day, coming straight out of our studio and all of our virtual softwares. That's another thing to mention. We launched a business during a pandemic, so we learned how to harness online platforms like this, much like you have. And
Yeah.
now we can record compressionless audio with people anywhere in the world that sound like they're sitting right next to me in the studio. And we've really decided to harness technology in order to uh, try to make some change out there and have different kinds of voices.
I love the idea of the storytelling element as well, because right now, there are a lot of changes in the world. There's a lot of evolution, and ultimately, we've developed the technology to the point where it's improved. And I come from, being thinking of Seattle. I was in Portland. I moved to Seattle. I worked for the Ackerley Group, who owned the Sonics and the radio stations there in Seattle. And so that's my background. I started back in, well, a number of years ago, I'll say, until Clear Channel actually purchased the Ackerley Group out of Seattle. And now it's evolved into iHeartRadio, which is another platform that has a network of shows that is syndicated across the country. And and so we've seen the evolution of this come about. When I first started, there were only a couple of channels out there on the broadcast waves, and now that it's thousands of shows. I think there's what 2.5, 3 million podcasts out now,
And there was
and
one a year and a half ago. It's more than
yeah,
doubled.
yeah, and so the real fact, though, the like you mentioned, is the fact that the majority of those podcasts that are out there, they get to about 7 to 12 episodes, and they realize, wow, growing an audience isn't easy. So you're spot on with that process. And so what has surprised you about growing audience in this environment right now? Is it that it's kind of surprised you or shocked you? Uh, that you're reflecting on as you grow this network out.
Well, you're the perfect example because you have professional broadcasting experience and you have this pirate logo behind you. We are very much back in the days of AM radio, right? And where
Yes.
people can broadcast from anywhere, they could say whatever they want, and it's a great movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman, Pirate Radio. Anyhow,
Yeah.
so we really set out to do two things. We started with some very odd, we called them algorithm busters. So when we got
Mhm.
started, we had one show that was a guy doing NBA basketball analysis, but his show was about sneakers. So he would talk about Jordan releases and the latest Kobe's and the cool shoes, but like 25
Mm.
of the 30 minutes, he'd be talking about last week's games and this week's games and LeBron news. But because we were about basketball sneakers, rather than being the 2000th basketball show, we were, in a handful of, you can't really classify a shoe category, but we tried putting our show in the fashion category for a little while, and it was pretty interesting. And that guy
Uh-huh.
happened to have a background from a big broadcasting school in the East Coast, and he brought on some interesting people and some players. But similarly, sports betting just got legalized in 28 states, and we had a guy that was doing a golf betting podcast. So he would talk about golf, same thing. But instead of being the number 500 golf podcast, maybe we could be like the number 4 golf betting podcast. And now there's so many betting podcasts. But we decided to try to integrate with people that could make money offline. So with podcasts, if you want it to become your job and you want it to bear fruit, oftentimes what you have to do is grow a following. Maybe you sell a couple banner ads on your website. Maybe you start getting some advertising on your show. And then within 3 or 4 years, you're putting out some kind of merch, Patreon. And then eventually maybe you have an app or a product of some kind. But the way to monetize podcasts is really education products are huge, putting out a course, having some downloadable resources.
Mhm.
But you see this thing now where you have somebody who starts out as a personal trainer at a gym in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And they're doing personal training and they say, my time is limited and I can only charge so much and I only have so many hours. So I want to start coaching online where I can syndicate some of my content. So then they become an online fitness coach. And then that goes well and they need to expand into fitness and nutrition and lifestyle choices. Okay, cool. So they're doing that. And then all of a sudden they realize that they're really good at that and they're going to start offering courses on how to become a fitness coach. And then they're going to offer courses on how to become an online fitness coach. And then they're going to offer courses on online publishing. And then they're coaching on how to be a coach. And they're not doing anything with fitness at all. So these people that evolve online every once in a while, I'm sure you've experienced, you're cruising Instagram you're like, wow, there are people on here that are making tens of millions of dollars. And like, I'm better than them at what they're doing. But they've been putting themselves out there and they've been honest. So we
Yeah.
teamed with people that were positive vibes, that in real life were coaches, authors, like I mentioned. And these are people who already have a course or already have a book. So, day one, I come from a background in product development, mostly in perishable stuff with food or alcohol.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
we have a gal that is patenting a bottle for protein powders. We have a person that's launching a clothing line. We've got several books coming out this year. So we've decided to work with people where in the real world they can make things happen. We've got a really exciting new show that's launching with a partner of mine that is a sommelier. She's a wine educator here in Colorado and
Oh,
she
wow.
is a influencer in the space. She's young, she's fun, and she's extremely knowledgeable. She's about to complete the WSET2 certification, which is getting pretty high. And now that there's these documentaries on Netflix about the master sommeliers, people think it's really cool that folks take these crazy tests. Anyhow, she's doing a podcast where she's interviewing winemakers from California and elsewhere that are kind of cool and hip and trendy and changing because the space you run into with wine is either it's way too industry stuffy or you're talking about the politics of the companies and stuff. People don't recognize the names. Or you're doing the 101 kind of stuff. What kind of things should I be buying to make spaghetti? Yeah, whatever. So
Right.
she's doing kind of like the culture of wine and why are people buying this one that has Snoop Dogg on the label? Whatever. So she's talking to all these winemakers, but then she's hosting these upscale in-person events here in Denver, and she's teamed with a local restaurant and a couple local beverage delivery places, so people can taste. The winemaker comes out from California, and then
Yeah.
people can have the wine delivered to their house, and then later on, he releases wine club stuff from the winery in California that they can have shipped directly to their house. And they all become part of this. She's curating wine clubs, she's curating classes, she's streaming. But immediately, all of these people here in Colorado for now become immediate tribe members and fans of that winery. And then all of a sudden, they're joining the wine club. They're having those wines for parties. They met the guy in person. How often do people get to do that unless you're in the industry? And this is going to allow us to put out a yearly wine guide book and instructional videos and streams like this of her interviews with the people. So you get to know what their faces look like, not just their name on the back of a label. So we've tried really hard to create this integrated platform and encourage people to be themselves. We have podcast hosts of every race, gender, religion, all these orientations, everything. And it's very exciting. And to be honest, it's been a very cathartic experience for me. I'm typically a bit of an empath and a bit of a helper. And we have a lot of folks that are yogis, and we have a lot of parenting type things. When I started, I was going to tell you earlier, I guess I forgot. When we first started this, I put up listings for podcast hosts, and we got 10,000 applications from around the country, and most of them had professional broadcasting experience. And it's kind of sad because people want a job right now, and they're willing to work for a commission, or they're willing to contribute to their portfolio in a new medium or whatever it takes. For the first time ever, you look at the news channels in your local market, and the anchors are in their 20s. And before you had to have 30 years of experience to hit the anchor desk, or you had to start in Kalispell, Montana, and then move to a Bend, Oregon, and then a Sacramento, and then maybe a Denver, But it takes a long time. It's kind of like being a commercial airline pilot. You move up to the next plane and you have to become the co-pilot, and then you get the pilot, and then you have to do that. But that's why when you go on an international flight, the pilots are always in their 60s, 70s, because you get to that big plane with seniority. So we teamed with some people that were graduate students that were doing a thesis in some kind of mass communication, and obviously a lot of mental health and family and well-being. But I got pitched an idea from a film instructor at NYU Film School that wanted to do an 8-person acting cast every week that were audibly acting out plays from up-and-coming playwrights off Broadway. Like, they're very specific. I had a guy that wanted to do a show that was a stream about songwriting, and he wanted to have a 5-person band kit set up every week. He was here in Colorado, and they wanted to show people what it's like to write a song and rock out on instruments. So we had all of these weird ideas.
That is awesome. And I think it amplifies the idea that we have an opportunity to build communities around a podcast. We have an opportunity to create communities around an idea or a thought, rather than the historical method of broadcasting and shooting it out to everyone and hoping the ones that need to hear it receive it. And I think now we're in a world where technology allows us the opportunity to build communities and create conversations around a subject, like you were talking about, the wine sommelier. And we've got the Drunken Grape out there that is doing some great work, and also Morgan Faith is doing some stuff in New York like that. And it's just these different communities are showing up, sharing that information. And I just think it's an exciting time. And it doesn't take everyone to be part of the community. You just need the right people in your community to build it up and grow it. And like you're saying, ancillary packaging and, products and services, just like, you can actually get products and services online now. And so it's like, you don't have to have 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 5 million people. You just have to have a healthy community that produces results that you can actually foster and love on and communicate with. Like, I want to give a shout out to some of the people here in the community right now. Marsha Reese, happy Monday. All the pirates and our kind admiral. we're doing Amazon Lives with Marcia, and she does a product called it's called Stay Well Copper, and it's a germ killing product that is pure. It's out there. It's doing some great work. And Elise from South Africa, very good morning, Russ and Andy and all the pirates. Fantastic. And you're talking about Wisconsin. Angie, happy Monday. I love that you're here. Martin is here. Hey, pirates. And and all of a sudden, Wendy, she's here. I agree, Marcia Reese. Our admiral is kind and his smiles are free. I promote the idea that kindness is cool and smiles are free, Andy. Welcome to the Pirate Week of Success and Abundance. And Russ Hedge back from Oregon, and talking about Portland. Good morning. Martin says, happy anniversary, Andy. He's talking about your anniversary of a year long being on this journey. And Marcia says, happy anniversary. What a fascinating story. Jenny Gold. Hi, Russ and Andy. Wendy says, welcome, Andy. We need another assertive pirate on the ship.
Love it.
Fantastic. Martin asked, how do you determine your content theme?
Well, we typically see what is out there. Now we're at a point where we're kind of stepping up a little higher, and we're getting some athletes and reality TV people that are interested in creating products. It's difficult because do you want to follow the trend? This is a for-profit business, and people look at companies like Airbnb or Uber. This isn't a taxi company, it's a technology company. And we are a broadcasting outfit, but because we're using all of these multimedia channels, we are delivering a technology. And so the biggest genre in podcasting is horror and true crime. So after Serial's popularity, there's a company out of California called Parcast that really, really launched with this. And it was a guy that graduated from Stanford. He and his dad started this together. And they have, I don't know, 40 shows now, and they sold to Spotify for something like 190 million. And theirs is a very interesting one because most of the other ones, one of my favorites is called The Ringer, and Bill Simmons left ESPN, took a couple producers. They have a lot of sports and entertainment shows, but they're co-branded. So there's like a movie podcast, and there's a TV show podcast, and then there's like a nostalgic movie podcast, and the hosts bounce back and forth, so they go together. There's a really great one, which I'll try to say this right. There's a really great podcasting network called Betches, Betches, and they have like Betches White House, Betches Bachelor, Betches whatever, but all of the branding matches, and there's again similar hosts that bounce around, very similar people. And so when we set out, we were like, crap, what do we do? Like, we're not going to be able to compete in sports. And the two first examples I used were sports. But right now, we're not about censorship or anything. We're storytellers, but we don't do sports, politics, or religion. So we're not trying to be on a polarizing end of something. We are very much positive vibes. So a lot of our shows are interview style. A lot of them are single or duo host, bringing on experts to talk about topics. But when it comes to content, I was approached by a lady who had a gigantic podcast about children's yoga. And we have a show called Rossifari. There's this guy, John Rossi. He lives in Philadelphia, and he's a traveling drummer, and he does drumming with a bunch of different bands and organizations around the country. And he just loves animals. And he started going to zoos, and he ended up getting to know zookeepers. And now he's like got this huge podcast. I mean, it's doing extremely well. And he goes around the country talking to zookeepers, and they geek out about like really meta animal stuff. But you wouldn't have thought something like that would take off. Our biggest podcast is called Spycraft 101. It's a host of ours that, let's just say, lives in Langley, Virginia. and has a pseudonym, but he has this.
Associated with a 3-letter acronym of some sort.
Correct. But he has a background in military intelligence, and he has a website about the Cold War and about spy clandestine. It's called Your Clandestine
Yeah,
Classroom. But we
fascinating.
actually just published his book last week of his first 101 stories. But there's gadgets and the KGB and all these weird things, and he's got an enormous audience. I think he's got like 12,000 people on his subreddit, and his show immediately kicked off, and people are into it. And it's an entirely different crowd than our Rocky Mountain yogis or our Seattle street artists or whatever,
Right.
And so it's an entirely different demographic. It's entirely different, I'm sure, political and social views, but it's very interesting because our listenership spans from well, I don't think we have any teens, but really they're up. I would say like 25 to 100. We have content for kind of everyone. And so
Yeah.
today, this anniversary was kind of my day to decide, was this endeavor worth it? I'm involved in a lot of different businesses, and kind of like you said about things not needing to be gigantic or taking a while. I had a business that spawned from this doing media booking. I have a couple of partners that have backgrounds in TV production, and it's very odd. I have a business partner who runs a matchmaking business here in Denver, where our headquarters is, and she helps people find love. And she had this matchmaking company, and I had this media company, and we decided to start doing media matchmaking. So we have all sorts of entrepreneurs that pay us to get on regional TV programs and on streams and in magazines, all the things. We are a PR agency, but we work mostly in talent booking. And when people come to us, there's a couple different types of folks. There's people that say, I want to know how big the following of this podcast is in order for me to go on it because I want the most exposure. I'm trying to build my audience. And
Right.
the opposite end are the people, like if I went on a podcast, I don't care if it has 10 million listeners or if it has 10 listeners, because if it's really professional, great content, I don't care if this person has a ton of experience or if their show's gigantic, because I have a pretty big audience. But I host several podcasts, and you never hear me talk for an hour about my story. So if this
Right.
guy's going to create, or gal is going to create really great content, I can turn around and push that to my audience, and they're the people who I hope see it anyway, So then there's a middle ground of people that want to maybe promote a book that they wrote or sell something or engage in some way with an audience. So it's very unique. And to come back to the question of how do we choose the themes of content, we really choose the people. We have had some folks that came on and totally shifted gears and did something very different. We have some people like me that by and large, I sell booze for a living. and I took some broadcasting in college, and I actually did an internship at Fisher Radio in Seattle. I met some of
There you
your
go.
cronies, or
I know
competitors, I
Fisher
guess.
Radio.
It's a bloodbath in those days. But
Yeah, no kidding.
anyhow, I find really interesting people that know really interesting things, and man, it's fun to be in the editing room because I would have known nothing about drones that look like
Spycraft.
birds. Yeah.
or children's yoga.
All of
Yeah.
those things.
Well, that's one of the themes of the Pirate Broadcast, interviewing interesting people doing interesting things, and you fit the mold perfectly. So I want to give a shout out to Tracy. She's the producer of this show. So she does the back office, the notifications, and making sure that I stay straight and keep
Tracy is
things
very
moving
organized.
forward.
We haven't met,
Yeah,
but I've got about 6 emails from her running up to this for the last few weeks, making sure I did
yeah,
not screw up. I was here
I
on the
did.
second.
It's fun. It's fun. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Martin. Russ, great content. So your audience would love him. So Russ has great content, so your audience would love him. And I think we talked about this, and really it's really important for our own mental health and our wellness and well-being that we we do things that we love. We appreciate what we're doing. We appreciate and adding value to the world. And just, I just want to thank you so much for being here, Andy, and sharing these stories. And I know we could probably go on for another couple of hours with this, but I know that our time is valuable, and I want to respect your time as well. So I just want to stay connected. And as a pirate, you're always welcome back. So anytime you're able to, let's connect and do a show together.
I'm so excited to be a pirate. I feel like I need like a badge or a tattoo or something. Part of the clan. Thank you.
There you go. And as always, we have this theme in the pirate broadcast that kindness is cool and smiles are free. So thank you so much for being here, everyone. Thank you so much for attending and asking your questions. Love that you're here and showing up every day. And we're coming up on 500 episodes a week from today. So,
wow.
We're going to graduate into 500 episodes and shift it out and change it up a little bit, but encourage your attendance and your attention and your being here every single day. So, Andy, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you and the things you're going to do. I'd love to talk to you offline about some of the shows and nerding out on broadcast and media and marketing and all the things that we got going on. It sounds like we have some things that we could talk about for a little while. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, everyone.
And as always, everyone, thank you so much, because kindness is cool, smiles are free, and you enjoy the day. Thank you for joining the Pirate Broadcast. If you found this content valuable, please like, comment, and share it across your social media channels. I would love the opportunity to help others grow in their business. The Pirate Syndicate is a platform where you show up, we produce the show. It's that easy. If you want to be seen, be heard, and be talked about, join the Pirate Syndicate today.